Some of you may have seen this yesterday if you're at my talk, and you may remember what it represents. It's a trick question for those of you who weren't in that talk. That represents Moore's Law, or inevitable change in industries. And what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit about how we view open storage and how we want to be part of the wave, not the boat. Right. So what's so open about open storage, and how does it collectively, not just for Nexenta, although I am going to talk a bit about Nexenta, just given that that's what I know best. But I think collectively, as an organization, as a community, as a set of users, how is openness actually helping us avoid obsolescence, or avoid the sort of transformative change that happens to hardware-based business models with proprietary technologies. And so it's really just broken into probably 10 slides on what's so open about open storage, and we can have a conversation about that. And so the first slide is an Nexenta slide, but what I wanted to stress is that we're not entirely open, right? So first, cards sort of on the table. We do use, as I think everybody knows, we do use ZFS as our underlying file system, and I think that's been talked about quite a bit. The Lumos is becoming the core of Nexenta Store, actually with 4.0, as I think Garrett may have just mentioned. And then we have this Nexenta OS wrapper around it, and all of that is open source. And the history of the company, in fact, is this. Actually, before that, the founders wrote the iSCSI stack for Linux, and their first thought was to try to do storage on Linux, and thankfully they didn't go down that path in terms of trying to do truly enterprise-class storage for primary storage on Linux. So what they did is, the day that Sun and really Bill and Jeff and team open sourced Solaris, they grabbed it and they spun this open source distribution, which you guys who were just in the last session know quite a bit about, since it was on that OS. And then Nexenta Store itself, again, just level setting, this is our business model. It's an open core model. Nexenta Store itself is actually software we've written that wraps around this open core, and we do not today open source much of Nexenta Store. Now, anything that is CDDL related that hits the kernel, ZFS monitor, for those of you who know what that is, we contributed that to the community, and we try to do it within 24 hours. We don't always do that, but generally we do. So anything that is down at the kernel level, we're trying to contribute back immediately. Anything up in the user space. For us, our model, it's closed. I'd still argue it's a lot more open for a lot of reasons I'll go through. I wanted to level set you on our particular business model. So set aside the technology for a second. I mean, the fundamental reason why I think our buyers and customers, and we were announcing, I think today, that we've hit 2,000 in about 2 years, see us as open is we don't sell the hardware, and that's why you're beginning to see this ecosystem of partners selling the hardware that their customers want, and we're not in that business of telling our customers what hardware they need. But you think through that for a second and wait a minute, but you're selling storage, right? And customers tend to buy storage that includes software and hardware, so while we don't make any money on the hardware, we do have to make sure that it's well integrated, that it's supportable, that if there's a fault, I mean, there's a demo going on out here with, thanks to SAS switching, they've got a couple hundred drives. It's all manageable via the Nexenta Store GUI and so forth. So just because we're not a hardware company doesn't mean we're off the hook for our customers, of course. We still have to be able to assure to them that they're getting enterprise class storage. So, but anyway, I won't belabor that point, and happy to dig into any of these. But we think the business model is part of the openness, but we also think the channel is critical, and that hardware integration is critical. Here's a novel idea in storage. The business model, we actually sell perpetual licenses, and I think most of us from sort of the open source world might think that's Like, duh, you know, I'm buying software from you, of course. But actually, it turns out that if you have a legacy storage array and you want to, you know, upgrade that, and obviously you can't take the software off it, and their only upgrade path is the forklift, right? And so actually selling, I think Compellent does it as a legacy vendor, who's also happens to be a partner of ours. But in general, perpetual licenses aren't done in storage. You know, you buy a box, that's the box, and when it runs out of headroom, you're done. In our case, it's always your license. So again, we're not selling the hardware, so it's a more open model from that standpoint. While we, unlike some of the guys from FreeNAS, as an example, are not fully open source, so you can't get an Nexenta store the entirety of the source, you can get a free version, and I think today or very shortly it'll go from the 12 terabytes for free to 18 terabytes for free. You turn on compression, you turn on dedupe, you know. I don't know how many home videos you guys have, but I mean, you know, it's pretty useful, right? I've got a lot, and actually I don't have that many though. But in any case, this is critical for us. This community piece, I think we do an okay job actually of responding to the forums and so forth. But there's about 30,000 registered users that in our database today of this community edition. So there are a lot of users. I mean, some of them may be, you know, duplicates with the same guy with multiple emails or what have you. But there's a fair number of them. They're great for giving us feedback. They're great for taking relatively new, fresh code as well. And the community edition is very similar to our commercial edition. But in any case, that's part of the open core model, and how we go to market is we do give away versions of our product. Now, this is getting to be a little bit more of a community pitch. I mean, we have some partners in the room that I think this would potentially really resonate with. And so Nexenta Store, of course, is based on Solaris, and then we wrapped around it Debian, and so that's where apt-get comes from. So one way that we're able to actually support a gazillion users with a relatively small company is all of our software package management's pretty advanced. We borrowed it from Debian, right? So, but we also have, therefore, the option to be able to get optional modules out to users, and that is free and open, and we don't charge for that. So Area Data, as an example, has this array management plugin, which is, again, is being demoed out there. They've written it so that they have some additional features on top of what you get with SAS arrays from LSI, and that's great. And you know, we're very happy to work with them for that. So we do have some other end users who are really excited about the using these same interfaces and ability to distribute software even via our infrastructure for some integrations into enterprise content management and some other areas. So it's an open platform. It's a lot more open platform than typical storage, that's for sure, right? Again, our take on openness, and I think there may be other takes on openness here. But this doesn't often get that much notice until, you know, you're kind of married to us or working with us, and you start to ask questions like, how would I do this? And we say, well, actually, we have the infrastructure, we have the opportunity. And then this is a little bit of a joke, but, you know, make the software extensible, and the answer for a lot of vendors, I think, is, oh, it's got to have a REST API. So we have a REST API. You know, we slap the REST API onto it, and an API is only as good as its use by engineering, right? If you have an API and your engineers don't actually use it, I would argue the API is always going to be out of date. At least that's my experience from the software world. And so in our case, all of our, we call them clients, but basically the UIs and of which there are a couple, they all use the same API. So my developers, are using this API. So when we say we have a REST API, we mean not only is it RESTful, but it's actually an API, right, that you can actually do stuff with, which is important, for example, in the cloud. I mean, nobody wants to touch consoles when you're getting to scale. And not just cloud, I mean, a lot of enterprise users are. You can also script to it and all of that, but an open API. Transparency. This is one where we, all joking aside, right, yesterday, what did I say? Please tweet about us, good news and bad. I mean, please talk about it. And we try to, we would call it uncomfortable transparency internally. It's one of our core values, but we really, really try to be open in our communications with the market and, for that matter, with each other. So that includes prices. It does shorten sort of the standard storage dance. Somebody says, "Hey, I got 100 terabytes. I want to, and what's the best you can do for me?" Right? Well, we don't, discount. So, and the prices are on the web. I hope you like the prices. And that's a calculated approach. I mean, we really think that it simplifies our world. Given that we go to market almost entirely through channel partners, it simplifies their world as well. Not a lot of real favoritism going on here. Everybody's got the price, and the price is the price. That may be fairly uncontroversial. Having all your bugs on the site, on the other hand, the first one makes my sales team smile. The second one, not so much, right? But we really try to be open about what bugs we know are out there, because I mean, just selfishly, if you look at it today, people know, right? I mean, this is the age of social media and so forth, and if you Google, big red or blue legacy storage provider CIFS bugs, you're going to find their bugs, right? Because somebody's going to be talking about them. In our case, we'd rather you come to our site or to the community site and actually find that information there, where we at least have a chance to see how many people are hitting the bug, looking at the bug, saying, WTF, when are they going to fix this bug? I mean, we'd like to be in the loop. And so that's our mindset as well. One benefit that having open pricing has, and again, for those of you coming out of more the open side of open storage, this may seem like, duh, but how do you really plan your TCO over X years when your storage vendor's business model is based on getting you in and then working you over in 3 to 5 years? I've bought, gazillions of dollars of CapEx in my years back when I was in a telco, right? I don't know. I never signed one of those checks, right? I don't know, the first 3 years are going to be about this, and then we're going to get into an epic negotiation, and we hope at the end of that, we're going to come out with this. I mean, come on, right? Really? We don't think the industry should work that way, so we think prices should be transparent, and they are what they are. And the nice thing is, why can you plan your TCO? I mean, software is a fraction of the cost of your storage buy, right? Most of it's hardware. And the reason you can plan your TCO is because we pretty much know what a CPU is going to cost in 5 years. I mean, at least historically, there's that line, right, or that wave, right? You can kind of plot out your CapEx costs per IOP, per whatever. Not that hard to do on the hardware side. But the software side is what I'm talking about here, and having transparency of prices, I think, is important. So if I had to go back over it, we're not fully open source. We do give away a version of the product. We don't sell the hardware. We think that lends to openness, lends itself to openness. We do have these perpetual licenses. Again, perpetual license, you think about our renegotiation. Think of the leverage we have with our customers when we go back to them and say, okay, I know you own the software, but we're going to gouge you for what? They already own the software. I mean, okay, so support, we theoretically could come back and say, maintenance is no longer 20% of this, and try something crazy.